Kash Patel was confirmed as FBI director. What is happening? President Trump signed this executive order. He said we have a right to see these documents. Now we have insiders at the FBI saying these documents are being deleted. They're being hidden and deleted in such a way that even Elon Musk cannot retrieve them. So we decided to go directly to the source, to a congresswoman who sits on the declassification committee, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, and ask her what exactly is going on here. She joins us on the show right now. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us.
Hey, so happy to be on.
Thank you for being here. So tell me what's going on here. I think we are a little confused about the process. Trump signed that order saying declassify JFK files, Epstein files, Diddy files. You're on the declassification committee. What can you tell us? How come we don't have those documents in our hands?
Yeah, so there's a declassification process. And so as you probably already know, but the committee actually doesn't hold declassification authority. That's up to 4 different people. It's the White House, it's Tulsi Gabbard. So the White House counsel, Tulsi Gabbard, Pam Bondi, and Mike Waltz. And so ultimately that initial executive order covering JFK, MLK, and RFK, there are 2 different timelines. There's 15 days and 45. The first one covers JFK. That's a 15-day timeline. That's actually passed. And then there's a 45-day timeline. And so what that requires is these powers that be to provide reporting on how they're going to roll out the declassification process. And so what the committee is set up for is to ensure that the president's objective is met. As you saw previously in the previous administration with Trump, Trump was urged to not declassify certain files because of Mike Pompeo. Obviously, we have aligned people now who are actually going to help push the president's agenda through. And so once those documents are declassified, then we come up in Congress and then we simultaneously conduct the investigations into the new findings. And so you'll also be interested to know that the National Archives actually has a process as well in all this. And so what we're finding is that once the order for declassification happens, that then there's another declassification process that has to take place where these documents are basically sent back to the originating agency for declassification. So from a legislative perspective, we want to clean that up. We're putting forward legislation to fast track this so that for future generations, so they don't have to go through this. But also too, it's going to be interesting because part of the reason why people don't trust their government is because they've been denied access to these files that I believe rightfully belong in the hands of the American people. And it's wrong for bureaucrats, it's wrong for people that are in unelected or elected positions to block that from the American people and block transparency. And so what we've been pushing for is that transparency. And we are also asking that the administration consider declassifying documents on UAPs, 9/11, COVID-19, and also those Epstein files.
Yeah, which I think we would all love to look through ourselves. That's the thing, right? When Elon Musk says you are the media, we want to be able to take this
1,000%.
stack of documents and look through it ourselves. We want to be able to search it. We want to be able to investigate what our government has done ourselves. So when you hear these reports from this FBI whistleblower that there are deep state agents, assumedly FBI agents, that are deleting files from servers, you reach out to the FBI. What do you know about this? How is this prevented? Are we going to lose access to this stuff?
So I actually reached out directly to the whistleblower to follow up. And so I was told by the whistleblower, actually the next day I got on the phone with him and he said that he has reported it to Kash Patel. To his knowledge, they are looking into it. I've also been assured that that's taking place. And we also have oversight communicating currently with the FBI. But frankly, the FBI has a lot of documentation that I'm finding. And if I can just share for a moment, I think I told you on X that we had some updates for you. We actually had the families of 9/11 reaching out to us and told us that the FBI leading up to 9/11 actually mishandled not just evidence, but also had reports of individuals casing the Capitol and never followed through on that. They actually had a video that was given to the families by a foreign intelligence, the UK foreign intelligence, that was also handed over to the FBI. And the FBI lost the video, actually showed individuals that were assisting in entertaining these pilots that flew into the World Trade Centers days prior. So why did the FBI mishandle that information? I mean, the FBI, what we're finding is a very corrupt agency. And I was also told by the whistleblower, mind you, just yesterday, that what's happening right now is that it's more than one person, and also too that this is happening from what we're being told under the former deputy director of the FBI. And so it's going to be interesting to see what criminal investigation happens out of the FBI. But what I can also tell you is I don't think it's coincidental that the moment President Trump declassifies, the moment that the task force has stood up, that you start to see this effort to basically destroy evidence.
Yeah, it's not only frustrating and outraging. There's this like urgency that we all feel, because if what this whistleblower is saying is true, and that even Elon Musk couldn't retrieve this file, is the truth going to be completely lost to us? And that is just this. I mean, it's almost like a hopeless feeling, something that, I mean, I know the Trump administration cares deeply about this. When President Trump realized that Mike Pompeo asked him not to declassify the JFK files for basically a nefarious reason, not for a good faith reason, man, nothing red pilled Donald Trump faster on declassifying these documents and getting them to the American people. And I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. But this bureaucratic process, I mean, how much of this do we put up with is the question before it is just like, give these documents to the people?
Well, first of all, I think that the process is pretty absurd. It needs to be streamlined. The minute that a president signs an executive order for declassification, it shouldn't have to go back to the originating agency. It should just then be declassified. But I also want to share something that's particularly interesting in regards to JFK. So this is multifaceted, right? You have the president that signs an executive order. There's a plan for the rollout. If I can just assure people, I actually met with the National Archives yesterday, and they told us that on Friday, there should be a landing page that's going to be stood up to where people can go directly and find all things JFK. And as soon as they get word to authorize the declassified documents, they will be uploaded in real time onto that website. So you shouldn't have to go dig for them anywhere. You should have readily easy access to them. You will get them at the same time that we get them. But then I was also told by a civilian declassification recommendation board that exists for Congress to go to when we are pushing for documents to be declassified to the American people separately, aside from JFK, that we needed to send a letter to the CIA Inspector General, because the CIA Inspector General was receiving reports. This is dating back to the Warren Commission, that the CIA was not handing over all documents pertaining to JFK's assassination, and that those documents might not actually be in existence anymore, but that the whistleblowers potentially could still be alive, and that they'd make great witnesses for this investigation. So look, I know a lot of people are like, why would you ever want to go back and address JFK? Well, I think that the Warren Commission did a disservice in history to the American people, talking about the true events that transpired on that day. And then also, too, I think that there's a very important factor here, and that's the accountability on these intelligence agencies. We're finding that rogue entities in the FBI are destroying evidence, allegedly, according to this whistleblower. We're also finding that over at the CIA, this was just reported on CNN, that you actually have a very real fear that there will be rogue agents selling classified American secrets to foreign governments. And we're just supposed to look at that and say, okay, that's normal. That's not normal. That's treasonous. And so if you have Congress that has no oversight, if you have people that are in charge of these branches that are not going to, or in charge of these agencies that are not going to bring punitive action, that's part of the problem. But we're seeing right now with Tulsi just dismissing all of those people at her agency, as well as Kristi Noem finding who was leaking ICE raids, that they're all losing their positions. But I do believe, what we can do as Congress is, we have to increase the mandatory minimums for people that are destroying evidence and also leaking classified information. In the military, if you were under UCMJ, that would be considered life at Leavenworth. And I think that there should be no difference between civilians and that.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I saw that report from CNN, and this is, by the way, the 7th floor of the CIA is where the basically executives are. And it's this report from CNN says that the 7th floor, meaning the top brass of the CIA, are the ones worried that their lower officers might commit treasons based on the mass firings. And I got to ask you, how much of that do you think is propaganda? Like, oh, we want to make the American people fear these mass firings, versus the leadership of the CIA actually has so little trust in their own agents and their own officers that they think that they could turn on and give classified info to an enemy?
Well, I'm split on it. I do think it's a threat because of what we're seeing happening in the FBI. And there is a very real war within the intelligence agencies ideologically, with people that would absolutely block, and not just the president's agenda, but I would think work against the American people, because they're simply they hate this government, which I would argue those people are in positions of power, and also where the people are largely responsible for violations of people's constitutional rights, especially under the Biden administration. But what I will also say is there's an aspect of me also that looks at this like propaganda, because when I first got to Washington, I was told that outlets like CNN, like the Washington Post, like Politico, were basically mouthpieces for the intelligence agencies. And then that was later actually confirmed by the ties to USAID funding. And so I do believe that there are people that would do that. We know that there were elected officials that pushed a massive lie on Russiagate that destroyed this country, and that they used those same lies to actually unconstitutionally spy on President Trump. And so what I will tell you is it's been interesting seeing this play out, because I can see the intelligence war happening. I can also see the blocks and the why President Trump needed to have a task force here to ensure that this agenda was met. But I will also tell you, Liz, no sooner than we stood up the task force did you see really the attacks kind of aimed at the task force, thinking that we had declassification when we don't. And then you find the FBI, says that the next day they find thousands of pages of documents relating to JFK. Then we see the destruction of evidence. And so there's a big shift happening here in Washington. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I do feel with the president, especially at the helm, that we will be receiving JFK, RFK, MLK. And we also did receive word back from every single agency that we will be getting, hopefully, access to other information, specifically on UAPs, et cetera, and 9/11.
And listen, this is one of the beautiful things about X under Elon Musk is you can just talk directly to us. I mean,
1,000%.
For the past 48 hours, anytime that there was any kind of fake news, you're like, no, this is actually what's happening. Understand the role of the declassification committee.
Yep.
I didn't even understand the role of it. So essentially the role, as I understand it, you can correct me, is oversight. You are supposed to hound this process, make sure that corruption doesn't happen, and hold people to task, even though you are not technically part of the declassification process.
Correct.
That's important for us to know, so that we as American people know who to lobby in Washington, D.C. when they're not doing their jobs.
Correct. And I think one of the important things about all of this is we have identified, just people at the archives who are actually head of NSC. From what I was told by the National Archives, was actually someone that was removed by Trump previously, reinstated back by Biden, but this is someone that likely would block a declassification effort. And so we are providing oversight, not just with the archives, but with the declassification process. And also we're ensuring that the American people will get this information delivered at the exact same time as us. And then there's also a second aspect in that I do believe that the Warren Commission did a disservice to the American people. That was one of the initial commissions that looked into the assassination of John F. Kennedy, because they pushed a theory that mathematically and scientifically was not possible with this magic bullet theory. And I think when you have the federal government blocking information that rightfully should be shown to the American people, that's when you have, conspiracy theories that might form. So what is the best disinfectant? It's sunlight. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do. I would also like to note, though, I have not seen the declassified documents yet. Again, we'll get that at the same time you guys do. But what I've been told is the reason why some of these documents had remained redacted, which I think it's roughly less than 7% of documents remaining, is because there were live sources still alive today that the CIA was running in order to collect information. And so, just full transparency, that's what I'm being told, but we'll see once the documents come out.
Yeah, the sources and methods excuse, I suppose, might
it's
have
outdated.
some veracity. Well, it's been abused. I'm sure there are scenarios where it's true. You do have to classify something to protect someone who's a source in a position of danger. But the fact that they've said that when it's not true makes me roll my eyes when they say sources and methods, because they think that they can use it as a cover.
Well, also remember, we were told that the CIA actually at their inspector general was receiving reports from employees at the CIA saying that evidence was not being handed over to Congress that likely had implicated the CIA. And this is, over 60 years ago. So whatever that might be, we have to run it down, at least give us verification. And, I think the American people are not dumb. I think the writing's on the wall with all of this. And I think that people are asking the correct questions. And so we'll ensure that you guys know names. And if we see someone blocking it, we're going to tell you guys. But yes, we're working to get that. Hopefully, we actually have briefings this week from what we're being told. And so we're waiting on word from the White House when we'll go over there, hear the plan for rollout. And there's still a March 7th deadline. And so we're going to be keeping you guys up to date every step of the way.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And we're obviously here to help as well. As you know, our voices are incredibly effective at pressuring the people in the government when they need to be pressured. So
thank you.
Let us know, please. Keep us up to date. You did have a post on X to Attorney General Pam Bondi. She had gone, I believe it was on Fox News a couple days ago, maybe it was last weekend, and said that she had some of these files on her desk. And yet, like I said, I know that the declassification process is archaic. It's too complicated. It's gross, essentially. But it wasn't clear to me after watching that interview with her, if she has them on her desk, like, what's the next step? How come they're not being uploaded right now?
I'm being told that I will receive correspondence later on today from the Department of Justice. And so I will be happy to update everyone after I receive that correspondence.
Okay, we'll look forward to that. I mean, I think we're probably all following you on X. But yes,
Look,
please.
I am trying to advocate for exactly what you guys want. And I think that, and it's okay. Like, I'm okay with helping to, present information. And I think the American people have a right to be frustrated because decades we've been denied information and we're promised this information. So people want to know what's taking so long. And so I assure you, you guys will know names. If we're,
Okay.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Well, I hope so. I really hope so. Okay, so give me that list again. So you said the RFK files, the JFK files, the MLK files. You are also going to advocate for the 9/11 files, UAP, which is, UFO, unidentified aerial objects.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, phenomena. And then 9/11 stuff. Is that
And
essentially
COVID-19 origins. Yep.
COVID-19 origins? Okay. Okay, is there anything else that we
And
should
we also too, yeah, so mind you, so the difference between a subcommittee, so remember, I sit on House Oversight, so this task force
Great.
is under oversight. A task force is 6 months long versus a subcommittee that's permanent. We actually have a lot more information that I think members want to look into. But the fact is that we operate on a 6-month timeline. So that's why we're also pressuring the powers that be to release this information and release this information quickly because it's a lot and we have a short window. And that's a lot of information to go through. I mean, just the JFK files alone, I was talking to the National Archives, and a lot of these files that had been declassified under previous administrations were never digitized. So the American people were promised it, but not everyone can come to Washington, D.C. to go to the archives and dig through this stuff. And so for the first time ever, they're digitizing this stuff. And I would just like to, let you guys know that the new appointee of the National Archives is a very like-minded individual that wants the archives to be known for being transparent, not people that were hoarding and blocking information that belonged in the hands of the American people. So we're very excited about that. But yeah, it's been an interesting time, I think, in history. President Trump's family, I would argue, and his success in this administration, because I do believe that he's going to go down in history as one of the successful, most aggressive presidents that's really saved this country. I believe if John F. Kennedy had the backing that President Trump has, had the people in his cabinet that President Trump has, it would have been a different outcome for that family. And I think with President Trump and the legacy that he's going to leave behind, the Trump dynasty, I think it's going to be amazing for us in this country long term.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, and you can see this in the live chat right now. We really appreciate you being an advocate for
Thank you.
us and doing what you're doing. It's not easy. It is sometimes hard from a distance to tell the difference between what's just like bureaucratic nonsense or like
Yeah.
a legitimate task. Like digitizing documents isn't something that can be done in like 2 hours. Like that does take time. And I appreciate your willingness to investigate this, your oversight capacity, and then your honesty and transparency with us. Like I said, I know I'm speaking for a lot of people who are commenting right now that we really appreciate what you do. I also appreciate you saying that you're cautiously optimistic. So would you say that it's a fair summary to say that yes, there are deep staters. It's a real threat that there are people who oppose Trump and essentially oppose us because we elected him within the CIA, within the FBI, within the intel community who are still trying to hide this information from us, but a lot of the holdup is simply an outdated bureaucratic process that also kind of simultaneously is going to be reformed throughout this?
Yes, but also too, there's another factor in this in that we're also at the same time learning in real time, fleshing out people that are being obstructionists and also bad actors. So remember, within a week of us asking for documents, we find out that the FBI is literally destroying evidence. There's an investigation there. We then also simultaneously find out that the FBI separately from this, within a day of launching the task force, and like within a week of President Trump announcing the executive order, found thousands of pages of documents relating to JFK that they previously had undiscovered. So, and that's
Unknown.
mind you at the same time, yeah, unknown, right? And then that's at the same time within 24 hours of the evidence destroying at the FBI, we're finding out that the CIA is talking about potentially people selling secrets to foreign governments. So when I say that we're witnessing this in real time, I mean, even at the archives, there's obstructionists that they're flushing out as well. And so it's interesting because we're seeing kind of this surge of new blood in Washington, but also when you realize, these people are so far programmed that they would even take something as historical as the JFK documents, try to block the release, obviously knowing that the intelligence agencies too were a part of that, I think, hiding of evidence from what we're being told by whistleblowers potentially at the CIA. I mean, that's pretty serious stuff. That's not just like every day. That confirms every suspicion that Americans had when that initially occurred in the 60s. And so what we're seeing now is just confirmation of even stuff back then. And that's exactly why it's so incredibly important for people to pay attention to politics and pay attention to what's happening. Because remember, this is coinciding with all the new evidence that we're finding that the CIA really hasn't changed, the FBI really hasn't changed until now. And so this is a very pivotal point in US history. And so I think that this is going to help further that, help restore trust with the American people. But also, too, I think we're all curious what really happened on that day. And so the first files that are supposed to be released are JFK files, which is why we set the first hearing for March 26th to be on JFK, followed by the declassification per the president's executive order of MLK and RFK. Now, we're also being told that there are families that are, some of the families with RFK and MLK legally might try to block some of the release of the records. And so
Can they?
I think that to an extent they can, some of them, but not all of them. And remember, there's a lot of different agencies that have a lot of documents on all of the named individuals. So just because something might be, try to be litigated in court with, like, let's say FBI documents, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be successful with other documents that might be in the archive. So we are going to be pushing very hard. You're seeing that already, and we're going to be navigating the process with all of you.
What would be the basis of that, though? It's a little bananas to me to think about, one person's distant relative can stop the entire population of America from seeing a document that shows the abuse that the U.S. government inflicted on an American citizen. What would allow them to do that?
I think in regards to potentially Martin Luther King, allegedly, this is what I'm being told, is that because there were potentially some questions about what was happening in people's personal time, but I am not necessarily sold that they will be fully able to block that because of the
those
fact
people
that
are
this
still
was
alive?
I haven't seen the file, so I don't know. But what I will tell you is I'm not too sold on that argument. From what I gather and from what I'm understanding, specifically with RFK and MLK, we have the documents. They're at various agencies. President Trump wants them declassified. The heads of these agencies also want them declassified, which is key, as opposed to having someone, for example, like Mike Pompeo blocking it. But also within these agencies, if we find that people are blocking that, that's why the task force is there, is we are pushing for it, and we will make sure that they feel pressure to release those documents.
Yeah, I wonder if if families blocking is another sort of sources and methods type excuse. Call me skeptical. Maybe I am a skeptic after everything I've seen in the last
Cautiously
decade.
optimistic is what I prefer.
I know. Maybe you're being more positive about it than I am. Maybe I should be. I should be emulating your attitude.
I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of agencies, and I can tell you that every single agency, for the most part, has been very willing to work with us. But it's because these agencies are headed up by like-minded individuals, which is key.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, President Trump. Finally.
Yes.
Finally.
Good appointees.
Yes, I mean, unreal. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were in agreement, and we are not like immune to criticizing people, even on our own side. And we're like, I don't know if I have a criticism of what he's doing so far.
Yeah.
It's outstanding. You mentioned a hearing. So if I am recalling correctly, March 21st is the first hearing.
26th.
The 26th, not recalling it correctly, March 26th. What do you expect from that? Who will be witnesses? What will be covered? What is that?
We're looking at calling in two individuals that were at previous investigations that agree that the Warren Commission's findings were not accurate. The Warren Commission is key, right? That was one of the first investigations that pushed this theory that a single bullet hit JFK and then also hit the governor of Texas. But what's interesting is that multiple doctors who were actually in the room after JFK was shot reported an entry wound in the head, an entry wound in the neck, and then when he had his autopsy in Maryland, they found an entry wound in his back. And so to me, and also based on renderings that I've seen with various engineering, and we're going to be putting this out to the American people, I do believe that there were multiple shooters. And a lot of Americans actually have that same sentiment. Then we find that the CIA didn't exactly turn over all the evidence, which further confirms that, in my opinion. And so it's going to be important for historical significance that all the information is accurately submitted so that history reflects the true events that transpired.
So some of these Warren Commission members, I think you posted about it, you posted their names and their ages. Would they potentially be called as witnesses?
Well, so we're actually looking to talk with them. I think that we're, as a whole committee, looking at who would be the best witnesses. But what I will tell you is what's interesting is about a lot of those. So mind you, when I first announced that I wanted to talk to people who helped run the Warren Commission, they try to say that everyone from the Warren Commission was dead, which is also not true. There's 4 individuals that are still alive, to include staff that helped run the investigations.
Wait, who said everyone was dead? Because that's like a red flag. That's like an
Yeah,
obstruction. Like,
it was immediate. Like the mouthpiece of the deep state left, like massive Dem pages actually tried to say that everyone from the Warren Commission was dead. And as you're finding out, they were lying. They're not all dead. I would not just say that on a briefing just to say it. But what I will say is that those individuals push a certain narrative. Why did they push that narrative? Let's look at the historical significance of this. And so my job as Congress is to make sure that the American people have all the facts and then let the American people decide. But I'm definitely not going to play into a historically incorrect narrative.
no, and that's so crazy. It's weird too that the intelligence communities are so committed to hiding this stuff 60 years later, right?
Oh,
Like,
1,000%. 1,000%. But that's, I think, why when you have President Trump come in saying he's going to declassify, and then he actually has heads of those agencies that want to declassify, and then you see, oh, well, look at what we have here. The FBI is destroying documents, of which they have to open up an investigation. It just confirms everything that I think everyone had a gut instinct on. I will say it's been interesting, Lizzo, within the last couple of weeks, just since I was named to kind of help lead out this task force. Mind you, it's not just me, it's other representatives like Eric Burleson, Eli Crane, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Tim Burchett. And then it's also tasked by a lot of people on the Democrat side that are in the same position that we are, that want to actually get to the bottom of what's happening within the overclassification, also the intelligence communities. Why are they blocking the release and preventing oversight from Congress? So this is a bipartisan mission that we have here, but it's interesting that specific to me, since this has happened, so much disinformation has been intentionally put out there. And I actually think, Liz, that some of these are by bot accounts, like bot farms. That's
Really?
actually a thing. Yeah, because you see the same repetitive term, and then it tries to confuse people. And I would actually ask the American people, well, wouldn't you want there to be a entity of Congress that's going to bring punitive action against people that block the president's agenda? And really, that's what this is about. And so I actually appreciate you simplifying all of that, because it's exactly true. That's exactly the purpose of our task force. And, we're going to do what we can to get the information to the American people.
Yeah, and I mean, sort of excited, sort of. I mean, I think we all have a little trepidation because, listen, I think the CIA was involved in the assassination of JFK. I think that's not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, not because I want to believe that my government would do this to a president of the United States, but because all the evidence that we have shows that we have been lied to and that there is another nefarious explanation. That is what I suspect. I'm not ideologically committed to this, meaning it's not some kind of religious view. If there's evidence that proves this otherwise, like, I'm open to it. Why wouldn't I be? But it's weird to me that people today in the intel community who weren't in the intel community when this happened, I mean, that was generations ago.
Literally decades.
Yeah, literally decades. Like, I mean, the Warren Commission is actually a good example. Like, most of them aren't alive, right?
Most of them aren't alive. And
old people.
yeah, and also too, the president at the time, who took over after Kennedy, also didn't believe the findings of the Warren Commission, which came out in audio recording. So look, this is multifaceted, but I just want to remind the American people that I was actually, and just like you said, there's actually Democrat and Republican members that actually hold the same sentiment that you do. I was actually talking to a Democrat and a Republican on the floor just yesterday, and I believe it's called Operation Mongoose. But that was actually something where the CIA had ties to the mob, had ties to Cuban sympathizers. And remember, at the time that Kennedy was assassinated, there were communist infiltrators all over. So does it mean that they could have been working together? Absolutely. President Kennedy did not also, remember, he didn't want to go into Vietnam. There's a lot that President Kennedy stood for that I would argue President Trump is still standing on those same positions today, except President Kennedy didn't have the backing that Trump does. He didn't have the allies in certain positions in government that had his back. And as you're seeing, just like President Kennedy faced, there's an intelligence war happening right in front of our faces, except this time we have people to back President Trump up on it.
Yep. I think you used the word unprecedented, and yep. I appreciate that, because we need something in our country that has never happened before, and that's this. So here's the thing: if you think that you are getting flack online from bots about the JFK files,
I do. I think it's just a declassification, and I think that that's because there are people that don't want this stuff to come out. But I don't
Yeah.
really care what happens online. I just hope that the American people understand what we're doing. And it sounds like they do. People aren't stupid.
They do. No, they're not. They're not. And they also recognize bots. But you think you're getting flack now. Wait until you do anything related to, unidentified aerial phenomenon or UFOs or aliens. That is going to be crazy.
You know what was interesting, though, is we had 2 other hearings on that. And because it was so bipartisan, bicameral, there wasn't a lot of flack that came with that, because I think now also from like declassified footage that you're finding from the Pentagon, that's actually that's real, right? And so, but in regards to the intelligence agencies, it's a very different beast. And so that's why it's interesting to see happen in real time.
Well, I'm glad to hear, and I'm surprised by this a little bit, that there are Democrat Congress members who are also on board with this. It usually seems like the Democrats in Congress, at least in this day and age, are pretty lockstep on the far left. So I'm glad to see that there are some who maybe have disagreements on policy, but in this case, agree. The 9/11 Commission, what is the collective view among members of Congress, of both parties actually, because there are committed America First members of Congress like you, like a couple of others, but that's not the entirety of the Republican caucus in Congress. Are people in your own caucus resistant to this stuff being released?
There hasn't, I don't think that they're resistant, because ultimately we're going to be collectively as a task force pushing for declassification of it. But there hasn't seemed to be as much interest in it per se. When I found out, I spoke to some of the 9/11 families that are suing the government on behalf of this, saying that the FBI actually blocked previous declassification efforts, et cetera. And then we're finding that there is mishandling of evidence, et cetera, to include the FBI mishandling evidence of people casing the Capitol for attack. I mean, that should disturb anyone. But the fact is that how could you expect the American people to trust your government when you're overclassifying or blocking documents that I would argue should be public, right? Like, we all pay taxes. We trust these people to be elected in positions of power to advocate us. But we're finding that, I would say, even from probably the 60s onward, that there's been this intelligence community that has become arguably until now more powerful than duly elected representatives. And that's wrong. And so that's where the check and balance comes in. And so that's why it's been so pivotal to have someone like President Trump in office. I can't emphasize this enough. President Trump didn't get elected, we would not see the level of corruption flushing out that we've been observing in the intelligence agencies, but also we would have never seen the fully declassified documents. And so I have all the faith in the White House that we will be getting these documents. I've been getting assurance from the agencies. And frankly, having the archives in my office yesterday talking about setting up the landing page for this is also refreshing. So again, cautiously optimistic. I think people will have the answers. I'm also being told that there's like no smoking gun, but I think it'll be interesting for the American people to see the CIA whistleblower reports, because I think that'll answer
no
our
smoking
questions.
Gun for which ones? For the JFK files?
For the JFK files, they're saying that there's no smoking gun. However, I'm also going to be requesting the CIA whistleblower reports for everyone to read. And I think that those will answer every single question that we had. If the CIA didn't turn over documents for particular reasons, you guys are going to read that verbatim in those reports. And I think that will tell us everything we need to know.
There's also the sin of omission, though, right? Like, even if there's not a smoking gun that says, actually, we knew that there were 3 bullet holes in JFK, and we pretended via the Warren Commission that there was only 1. Sometimes it's actually like January 6th, right? The FBI had narrowed down the suspects of who might be the alleged pipe bomber guy. They'd narrowed it down to like 186 phone numbers, according to the Loudermilk Massey report. Then they narrowed it down to 1. And then all of a sudden, after they'd essentially identified the guy, at least by his phone number, the investigation went dead. So there may not be a smoking gun in the sense that maybe they don't know the guy's name, but the fact that they stopped the investigation is the smoking gun. So there's a smoking gun and there's a smoking gun. So I will be happy to see whatever's in the JFK files. Let me ask you one more question before I let you go here, and that's regarding 9/11. So my understanding of what maybe we would expect from the 9/11 files, there's obviously a whole spectrum of, when I say conspiracy, I actually don't say that with any derogatory
Just
intention.
Theories
about 9/11. And there are some conspiracy theories that I reject because there's no evidence, like, oh, it was an inside job. But it seems to me that there is evidence. There are reports. Some of this is, anecdotal, not necessarily fully documented. But when you are connected in Washington, D.C., you do hear things from people who were there, that the White House, the Bush White House, including the National Security Council, was aware of chatter from terror groups about September 11th, 2001, specifically that date, aware of chatter about a plot on that date to crash airliners into the World Trade Center. And they decided that that was not a credible threat. That is what I've heard we could possibly find from those documents. Please give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so based on what I'm hearing from very credible witnesses, and also we are working on obtaining that piece of footage that UK intelligence gave to these families, that they had UK intelligence also shared with our FBI. I am hearing firsthand that the FBI, whether intentionally or not, mishandled credible threats leading up to 9/11. So I would say that based on what I'm hearing, that that's likely a credible assumption.
Well, that will be, I mean, that's beyond a smoking gun. That's also scandals like we rarely
look,
see.
I'm seeing that, like, look, everyone has suspicions that the CIA needs an overhaul, and you're seeing that. I mean, it's literally on CNN. It's literally on CNN. But the FBI, wow. The FBI, Cash and Bongino could not have a better set of people to flush that out. But what I've just been hearing over the last, 2 weeks, I couldn't make this stuff up.
Yeah, it'll floor you. Well,
yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing, Congresswoman Luna. We appreciate having you on the show. Hopefully you can come back soon and update us once progress has been made in this cumbersome process. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.